Welcome to the In Peace We Rest podcast. We are here again today with all of you beautiful listeners or watchers, depending on how you are consuming this podcast. We're really excited today to talk about going into the void. Some of you might know what that means. Some of you might have no idea, but either way, we're going to talk about it. And before we do, as always, let's anchor in. Let's anchor in today. Who would like to lead us in that?
I think it's scary.
Is it me?
Yeah.
He's wiggling in. He's like, all right, let's go.
All right. All right, everybody. Deep breath in, all the way in. Fill that lung all the way full, all the way full, all the way full. And then let it go slowly empty. Just sinking into our space as we let go. Breathing in through the nose. And letting go. Breathing back in through the nose. Just feeling that cool air, calming down the heat, bracing the winter. Just easing into the quietness, the now. Really being here in this moment. And we have arrived.
The void was when I woke this morning, the inspiration for my writing today was the void. And I kind of want to share how I got to this place real quick, because it is really kind of an interesting thought in it. I feel so much we want to take these big spiritual concepts and we want to make them into this bigger thing that they are. And we don't always see how they show up in everyday life. And so the way that my body got to this place was actually really coming from, have you guys heard of the idea of like breadcrumbing someone, where you like text them enough and then you kind of pull away, and then you text them and then you pull away? One of my guilty pleasures is I love to watch relationships, and I'm a part of this Facebook group. I actually recently have been contemplating removing myself from the Facebook group, because like the energy can be a little like, oh gosh, not everyone is this bad. But I'm in this Facebook group, and it's like, you're dating the same person kind of stuff. And it's a lot of people who are single in the world. It's Utah, and they're talking about the dating world. And I think the dating world is really interesting, and particularly this idea of breadcrumbing. And so I started this thought of like, what is that? Like, why does someone breadcrumb someone? And I feel like my body took me in this place of intimacy and really connecting with, you're really putting yourself out there. When you're texting someone, when you're trying to connect with someone, you really are dating. And you're obviously, that's what it's called, dating. Duh. But you really are starting to show someone your rawness. And depending on where you are in your journey, you might be really curating that. And that might be really intense. And I feel for that exact scenario so much, because we don't even know the person. And then we have like my energy in that situation and your energy in that situation and the energy between us. And how, like, as someone who is maybe a little more challenged in the intimacy department, like, I'm not the one who's going to be like, yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, ease in, sister. And all of the energy that is that moment. So then it's like, go, and you're like, how did this get to the void, Jasmine? Get us there, sister, because you're in this weird place. So I start to kind of throw these ideas just down on paper, and I'm talking about like the fear of that, the fear and like the holdback. And when you really start to go into relationship, right? So we have my energy, their energy, and this and the relationship energy. And that feeling, the movement of that word is where I start to get into this void kind of conversation. At least for me, the movement of words is always really fascinating. But you kind of fall into that relationship, right? The relationship being this void, this container that we don't know what it is yet. The essence is not really known to any of us, especially at the beginning, and you just fall into this place. And I was like, that's the feeling of the void. Some of my close friends have been really speaking of like spontaneous awakenings and sensations they've been feeling in their body. And there is this conversation of like when you go into water energy, some people really struggle with that and they get like yanked in, that yank inward movement, and it can almost take your breath away. And then there's nothing. You see nothing, you feel nothing, but there's movement. There's a movement that's happening, and it almost can make you feel like vertigo. In my thoughts. Are you guys following where I'm going with this?
I'm just listening.
There's a lot of staring, and I'm just like, okay, here we go, Jasmine. You're gonna go. You said you didn't want to talk about it before you started, so here we are.
We're along for the ride. I'm following what you're saying. I feel like there's so much to even talking about what the void even is. It means so many different things to different people.
Yeah.
And I love that you're talking about this movement piece and the definition and how does it feel? How might we help people who are completely unfamiliar with what the void even means?
Yes.
And I would venture to guess, I mean, for me, in my experience and helping other people through theirs, there is a multitude of different definitions for what the void means to every individual person. And I feel like that's really what we're talking about today, yes?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I feel like how not only what's the definition, but how are you experiencing that word in in relationship to something, right? And that's gonna change because you could have like the first time I ever even heard of the void, I had a very different relationship with it because I was so sort of bracy to the idea and it was uncomfortable. Now I'm like, yeah, let's connect that to breadcrumbing and let's see how that shows up in relationship and the fight, fight, freeze responses of things and how your body's default settings affect the way that you receive the void. Sorry, Jerry. I know you had something. And then I was
Oh, you're good. Yeah, it's just I am that person. Like, because I keep hearing the void, but I really don't know. I don't understand what that is. Like for me, like coming from my paranormal background, I think of like the void of like the abyss, right? Like the deep ocean. Basically a description of where the emptiness is probably my best guess. So I'm just trying to get a simple definition so I can kind of understand where all of this fits in.
I think that that was probably the best simple definition I could come up with, what you just said, because I think it's, everything is there's a simple definition to every word, but it's the essence and movement in you that make it dynamic and how it matches with your chemistry and how you connect with the word that changes it. And which is scary slash lovely at the same time, because so many people, they experience this word, the void, and the void comes into their life at the beginning of their awakening. And then they're frustrated as hell because no one can give them like this Western definition of how to get through it. And for me in my awakening, that was a huge bit. Like at the beginning of my awakening, I feel like I went straight void. Like I had this bliss, I had this all of this movement, all of this vibration, all of this humming, and then I went right into the void. And I felt so disconnected from everything, even my own thoughts, which
So would you say like the Vipassana stuff I do? I mean, because that almost feels like I'm intentionally going into the void, right? Like because that's just letting go of everything and just trusting the absolute everything I don't know. Is there parallels there?
I feel like there's probably yes and probably no. Um, for me, in my experience of the void, like, firstly, I feel like it's really important to touch on the fact I don't think you only visit the void one time throughout your life or your spiritual awakening. It's
yeah.
We're gonna
Well, and
right?
and I have one more question real quick. So is the void a good thing or a bad thing, right? Or is it a neutral thing?
I feel like it is a challenging thing. However, for me, it's always marked a time of transformation. Like for me, it's that shedding of your old self, but you haven't quite fully become your new self yet. It's that space between where you feel very lost and very empty, and the world like really doesn't make sense to you anymore.
So, like, right when you shed your ego and you're
Yes.
in that space of, okay, I just let that ego go. Now, who am I? And you're in
Yes.
that space of trying to re identify in a way, correct?
That's how I personally have experienced it. And
Awesome.
I'm really curious to hear more too, Jasmine, about your thoughts because I'm curious how I'm going to connect the dots from my experience and Jerry with your experience. So let's go. Go from those definitions, Jasmine, and take us on a journey, if you will.
Yeah, I feel like, all of what we're talking about, it's so it's so hard to make in this spiritual world, it's so hard to make statements that are like, this is what it is, because there's so many different variations of how you can experience that. And so, of course, I just want to disclaimer, like Roxy said, I feel like you go through the void many a time. And depending on where you're at in your life and what has caused that, you could like it or you could not. And that's all relative. Like I mean, then you can get into the conversation of what is good and what is bad. And that's a whole matrix conversation for another day. But you get where I'm going with that sort of thing. I feel like the other thing about the void that is maybe a little different than where I think the Vipassana style, where you really intentionally go into emptiness. The void, I feel like, is at least from my experience and those who I've connected with and talked more about it, it's a pulling that you're not in control of. Like you can't stop it. It's this There is this draw in, this intense, it's like the most intense, in breath work when you breathe in and then like you kind of breathe in more and then you're breathing in so much that you feel like you're not breathing in anymore and like you're gonna suffocate while you're breathing in.
Right.
You know that feeling, that it's like that. Like breath is happening and movement is happening, but it is really intense. And it is
Right.
you don't have a choice really. And I think that's where it can be scary because it is just I feel when you've gone to the void, you've already a bit surrendered and you've already let go enough. Like you're already you're falling into it already and you want it. And then it comes and it comes intense. I
Yeah.
feel.
And I feel like I've probably been through this void a lot of times in my life. I'm sure, right? And I'm sure most of us have, right? Okay. I'm just checking.
Oh,
For
I
everyone listening, Jerry, before we started, he was like, "Oh, I'm not so sure." And I was like, "Let's just go for it, Jerry, because I think you're gonna be right there and you're gonna ask questions that people are gonna ask." So
Right. Oh, that's awesome.
go ahead, Roxy. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I don't totally remember what I was gonna say, but I feel like it was something along the lines of the fact that we experience it differently every single time. And I feel like it is this, like you said, shedding of your former self and like really before, like that that's where you want to go, right? I want to release this. I want to step into this newness. But once you surrender to releasing it, there's this really loud awareness that holy shit, I just let all that go and I can't get it back. And there's
Yeah.
this panic moment I feel like that takes in, and you really have to lean into acceptance. And I feel like once you get to that point in your journey where you recognize what's happening, it can still be very intense. It's usually still very intense, but there is this acceptance that makes it less challenging,
Mhm.
if you will.
Yeah, and the next sort of as my mind went down this journey this morning, the next connection I made to the void was okay, elementally, where does this sit? We talk about this really for me feels like this space between metal energy, like between fall and winter, where gravity is pulling that grief. I think grief is a really can be a really large catalyst and most people's stories that I've heard have really connected with some form of grief, some form of really fully receiving. And I really want to make that definition effort because in the movement piece of grief, right? We're fully receiving and releasing something. And that's where the void sort of comes in is we get that. We full in metal energy, we do fully receive and we release when we're in flow, right? In a beautiful state of flow. And then we go into water, which is kind of interesting because now we've received and we released it. And then we have held on to some things, but it all just doesn't really quite make sense as much now. Like you were describing, like, I've let go of this. Holy shit. Now what do I do? Like, what does that mean? And that's where I feel the void shows up. And I would even offer that maybe there's a connection between like seasonal depression and how you do that, anxiety and how you do that. Like, can you sit in the pause? Can you sit in this uncomfy energy? And at the first time you do it, it's horrid. I mean, this is the connection to Vipassana, Jerry, I think.
Yeah.
First time you go to Vipassana, you're like, "Holy shit." And then the next time
It's a lot.
then you start to kinda crave it.
Yeah, you start to understand the deeper meaning of it. But yeah, there's that shift of awareness. And that's what you're talking about with the void. And it's just that moment of when you're making these life changes and you have this new awareness that totally makes your old life look like something completely unfamiliar anymore because of how you feel. And it's just that process of moving through that.
Yeah, it's this question, that space that we sit in when we ask ourselves, "Who am I?" without fill in the blank, right? When we're experiencing grief or loss, which I would agree with you, Jasmine. I feel like that's the majority of the time what triggers this going into the void, the transitions of the shadow work that comes up for us, especially within this season of winter. Um, it's that giant question of who am I now?
Mhm.
Because I'm not the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, we talk about in Good Grief, we talk about that a lot, like the fact of just losing who you were, whether it's physically, emotionally, whatever. Like when you lose yourself and you loved yourself. And so when that's now gone and changes, that grief is 100% valid.
Mm.
Yeah, and I wanna speak to as we talk about, like, what is happening up here in the mind in the void, I feel the important another important conversation is what's happening in the body, and that's the piece that I was really, like, jazzed about as I was contemplating this morning, because you guys know I love the body, and I always love to know, like, where the movement's going and what's happening and what's happening out here and what's happening in here. And the piece that I feel like others are maybe not talking about, and I'm curious if you guys have experienced, like, that piece of a bit of vertigo there where and you have accepted. I think it's really easy to accept, "Okay, I'm in the void. Okay, that's great. And I know that I'm maybe not gonna be getting a lot of guidance right now." At least for me, that's what happened, like, everything kinda turned off, and it became very, very quiet. Um, and that became a little uneasy because I was so used to so much going on up here, right, with the conversations between my ego and myself, my spirit guides, and, like, like, whole TV show going on up there. And when you go into the void, at least for me, the first time that I had been in it, it was like I had to be so focused or else I couldn't receive or feel anything. And that was really frustrating. That was probably the most frustrating bit for me, is I felt so very disconnected. This is not where I thought I was going with that sentence, but I'm gonna go on this ride because this feels like a better place anyways. Um, I felt so disconnected from the outside world and I couldn't feel who was around me. I couldn't feel that connection. I couldn't and what really was being taken away from me is I couldn't handle people. Like I couldn't try to manage the situation anymore. I couldn't handle what was going on. Not as if I couldn't handle it, but I couldn't manipulate it anymore. And I just had to ride with whatever was presented to me at the moment. And that was really what a gift, but also intense.
Absolutely. It forces you to go within. It forces you to focus only on yourself because at the end of the day, we can't change other people. We can
Mhm.
only change ourselves. So how am I being influenced, triggered, insert adjective here, by my environment, by my surroundings, by the people around me? And what is that bringing up for me? Hence, what am I feeling in my body? What thoughts are coming up for me right now? Where is that coming from? And what am I meant to do with it? And by going down that path of curiosity, it lends that deeper understanding so that you literally start to see the world through a new lens.
Yeah. You start to question everything. And that depending on where you are in your I like gr I like to say grayness. Where are you in the fact that life is gray and it's not black and white? Where are you at with accepting that? Can really go hand in hand with how well you handle this time in your life.
Well, and it's really hard here, like where we live, because like a lot of people, like they've been told their whole life that this is how it is, and if you follow this, it's gonna all be okay. But it's just one box. And what happens when you go on this journey, we start to realize that there's so many boxes, and we're never taught that. And I think it's that transition of like really stepping into like awakening to the reality of what our world is, like why we're here, and not just from one point of view, but from every point of view. And so when you start to think about that, that's heavy, right? That's every single person on this planet's perspective. And man, how heavy does that weigh on us? I think that's why it makes it so hard, because it's like when you come out of these journeys and you come back and you try to like like talk to people. And I think this is where you said that it's hard to be around people, Jasmine, because it's how could they possibly understood what I now understand because of how hard it was for me to get through that space.
And how can I even before that, how can I even dare communicate such an essence? Like, how can I and this was part of a conversation, I don't remember who I was talking to. I think I've been having this conversation with a few different people as I talk about what's happened for me lately. The more we tell a story, then it becomes rehearsed and a lie. It becomes untrue because now we've manipulated it so much. And I think for me, there was a lot of when the void when I went into the void, I wanted to talk about it. So especially the first time. Other times it's not as so much, but you want to talk about it so much because you're trying to find your ground. Like you're trying to find some kind of anchor point because not only is it dark, the ground is moving. And that feels like I feel like I keep saying that over and over again because I really want people to see that. Like that's the piece, that movement piece that's happening, that inward pull that's going on at the same time is what is throwing you off. That is what is causing you to be off kilter because you don't. When you're in that space, there is no up or down. There is no left or right. There is no good or bad. You're just getting sucked in this intense way into yourself, which innately is safe. That's the body you chose to be in. But there's all these programs, responses, relationships, and all these other things that are telling you that it's not.
I think it's interesting too how you speak to this idea of you wanting to talk about it. Like when I go into the void, I need to talk about it. I need to talk about it. I'm
Mhm.
curious how you've chosen to express that throughout your different experiences of going into that. Like for me, the first time it came up was like extreme anger. I was just mad at the world. And now as I go through it, it's definitely softened. I feel that fire come up. But through that line of questioning, I'm able to soften. But it was really intense. And I think that was the scariest part of it for me was that need to express, but not feeling like I had control over how I could express it.
I don't know because, I'm more than happy to go into the anger space personally, and I was even back then. I feel for me, not being seen and heard was definitely the piece of like, I'm really trying to tell you this thing. Like, I really need you to see what I'm saying here. And you could, I have like a hair on my hand. You can really It feels so graspy because you're trying to describe something that is beyond words that you even know, and you're also feeling a little bit like a crazy person. Okay, like a lot of it like a crazy person, because 'cause you're just like, "Wow, did I just have a break? Like, did I just have a mental break?" And a little I would say, "Yeah, you did. You did, and it's okay that that happened." And I feel as most people go on this journey and they have these kind of void moments more and more, yet you're just like, "Okay, here we go." Like, you just accept them, and that's why they are so much less intense as you go on because 'cause you're just like, "This is another ride," and you get more I feel each time I go into the void, I come out more connected to more aware of who I am and how I go about things, and it's not so much the void for me is never a place of fixing. It is always a place of awareness.
Yeah, I love that you speak to this piece of being seen and heard, because I feel like one of the first awakenings you go on, the first time you go into the void, excuse me, it feels like the biggest shift, right? This is the most drastic transition. Looking back, I feel like I'm a completely different person now. And there's a fear of how can I show up as that new person? Help like accept this new me, see the new me, and also like help validate that this who is who I'm meant to be now, because even I'm not totally sure if this is who I am. And that's where that graspy energy comes into.
Yeah.
And I think what you do, like for me, it's all about like just listening to both your stories. It's just about grounding and like taking all that energy and grounding it so we're stable. So that way, when the waves come, because they will, like you're able to handle that brace a little bit more. You're able to understand it a little bit more. Your awareness, so that way it's not as painful. It's not. It doesn't hurt as much because the waves start to even out and balance out, and that's kind of our goal. But we can't do it unless we're grounded. We can't do it if we take all that energy and push it down and into the earth like it's supposed to catch. Like the whole point of the earth is to hold us, to cradle us. And I know we all talk about it in our meditations. And so it's like, yeah, just visualizing all that energy grounding us so those waves don't knock us over anymore. And it's like we can actually kind of like, oh yeah, it's just a moment. It's just a space that I need to just brace a little bit harder and not stress as much, not what if myself to death. Just know that I'm okay because I am grounded. But yeah.
And I would offer even in this I love that you brought up this conversation of the brace because okay, well, how is that serving you? Maybe there are situations as you go into the void that the brace does really serve you and you really do need to anchor in. But I would also offer too that maybe what could feel good for you is allowing the movement and and asking yourself the conversation of okay, what am I anchoring into truly? Am I anchoring into my channel, my version, like, have connection to the earth, or am I anchoring into others? There's a lot of really fun contemplation that you can do in this space, and it's really fun. I love that I did not share my contemplation with you guys, and then as soon as you guys started talking about, like, the fear and the brace, like, that's what's showing up on my screen, some questions. And, so the void of fear, there's these really cool questions that say that we ask ourselves, and this is what arises at the beginning, and is what if we've lost our way? And I think that's a really big question when you go into the void, and it really aligns with, oh, I've really had a a psychotic break here. And you do start to get into that space, like you were talking, Jerry, where it's like, holy smokes, the entire world is changing, and I don't know what to do with this, and I need to sit down. And I need to just know that no matter what comes from this contemplation, we are still on the earth. We are still living in the society that we're living in. Th- Not everything is going to change exactly how you think it's going to change. It's just the way that you look at it is going to change. And I feel like in this beginning piece, we can say, have we lost our way a lot, both for ourselves and for society?
Yeah, and almost kinda, like, have gratitude for that. Like, thank God, because of what we're able to learn along that path, right? Or getting back on our path. Like, those are the best lessons. Those are the lessons that, like, really hit our hearts and, like, really drive us to become who we wanna become, right? And be better.
Yeah, I feel like the fear in that is very real too though, right? Because if you are seeing everything so differently, I mean, enter in this tribe mentality, right? Am I still going to be accepted by my tribe? Or am I going to be
Mhm.
cast out? Is this where I belong? Or is it not? And is that going to be my choice or not?
Yeah. And is this your right tribe? Or do you need to make your own tribe? Like, how many times have we all talked about making our own tribe? I mean, that's kind of what we're doing, right? We're trying to
Mhm.
make our own little tribe of people that just want to like live and be free, like
Yeah.
emotionally.
Well, when you think about the journey of even like the houses of astrology, right? When you go through the first 6 houses, the first half of your life is learning that you are separate And then the second half of your life is learning to come back together. And I would say when we speak of like teenagers, for example, I feel like that's a pretty voidy experience when you are in high school and you're really learning and you're asking these questions of what if I've lost my way? What if I don't understand who I am anymore? What if there's nothing left? Like those are so often the sort of questions that show up in that time. And they're deep, but they're pretty freaking cool too when you start to ask the question, answer these questions in the space of, well, I am me. I am stardust. I am always. I am the unchangeable truth that is around me. And everything else is an experience that I get to have. That I feel like was the biggest gift that going into the void teaches me every single time. That this is a play. I am choosing experiences. And then when you can, at least for me, when I can surrender to that void space, it does come with so much power of choice for myself. And also a whole lot less serious about it because I know I'm going to do it again.
Yeah, there's so much wisdom in the stillness and in the emptiness if we allow ourselves to sit into it. And that doesn't mean gaslighting yourself that those fears don't exist, right? It's about embracing those fears, listening to them, and really anchoring in where those are coming from and if they're really serving you in this moment. Um, and I feel like for me, every time I go into the void, I'm so much more anchored into who my true authentic self is. And I get to shed those layers that aren't serving me anymore and why I came here in the first place, you know? And all of those fears still creep in, but I have found every single time that when I leave the void and I integrate this new being into my life, into my relationships, it only strengthens my experience. It only adds value. It only increases the love. It only increases the connection that I'm able to have, not just with myself, but with the people that I love and the people that I don't even know yet. There's an openness that exists on the other side of the void that I am incredibly grateful for by the time you get through it. It's just that trust that you're going to get through it.
Well, and it sounds like you're really strengthening your intuition, right? With everything you said, it's like my intuition now is on point and I can trust it and I can know that it's only going to serve me in a good way, right? It's like all that leads into that. And then like what a powerful gift, right? Because like I don't know for you guys, but for me, like my intuition is like I've told myself so many times, man, if I would have just listened to my intuition, if I would have just trusted that gut feeling, that heart feeling, that brain feeling, whatever, because it's all three sometimes. But it's just really just listening and getting to know yourself. And I think this void space is exactly where you get to know that real self and that real ability to like move through the lessons, move through like the hardships, move through the good things too. I think it could like, so I love that I try to define it, but the reality is it's just a space to grow that we all go
It's
through. Yeah.
it's empty space, like you said. It's this empty space that when I really love to see when people get to the space of harnessing it for good and realizing that it is hard, but it's not suffering. It's a little uncomfy because it's different, but it's not suffering. It's not horrible. It's really lovely. I don't know that I know a person who once they identify that they're in it, they're not laughing because it's like, "Oh, here we go." Like, "Oh, yeah, that's what's happening. I'm in the void right now, and that's why I'm feeling the way I feel." And then you just, like, chuckle and then soften, y and then you're there for however much longer you're there for because we, again, don't get to choose. But also, man, releasing control is also a bit of like, "Yeah, okay, I don't need to be in control. I'm in the void. I can't control any of this." Like,
Yeah.
I find myself saying that, like, when I go into the void, I'm like, "I'm in the void. I don't."
So I always play like this energy game, right? So like when I get in those spaces, like I get all that worry and all that like energy I use to try to figure it out when a lot of times I just need to go into this space. But the cool thing is when I choose that, I am not wasting that energy anymore. So I get to save that. I get to use that energy for something else. It's like an energy game for me. And it should be for everybody, but it's like it's so valuable, right? Like really, how valuable is our energy? Right? When you wake up, you have all the energy in the world, how great do you feel? Versus the opposite. This is an opportunity in the void. And once you understand it, to be in this space to where you're not expending that energy on trying to figure something out that doesn't need to be figured out. It just needs to be experienced and your awareness needs to be brought to it.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I feel like for me, when I go into the void, it blocks out all of the noise, right? Nothing makes sense anymore. I can't think my way through it. This is a space where I have a direct connection to my highest self. This is
Mhm.
a time where I am forced to listen to her and allow her to guide me. I can fight with her all that I want to, but like you said, I'm not in control. So I get to decide how this experience is going to go. Am I going to lean in? Am I going to fight it? And every time is different. Sometimes it's a push and a pull, right? When I can just allow it, man, it is pure magic. And I love that you spoke to this piece of intensifying, strengthening your intuition. And for me, that is that connection to my highest self. And that does get stronger every single time we go through this. So it is a fun play experience as well, even though it's not always like super fun. But it is this dance of play that we're just
Mhm.
learning all the different steps, trying to figure it out. And it's clunky as shit in the beginning. Let's be totally honest. We are falling on our face, we're bruised, if beaten. But on the
That's
end of the dance, it's graceful, man.
yeah, that's the beauty of growth, right?
Mhm.
That's the beauty of growth. And we're growing, right? That's why I tell everybody, I'm like, just are you growing? Are you challenging yourself? Are you doing something to like make yourself feel better? And this is just that process. And yeah, that growth is so necessary, like, so you can feel like you're contributing, right? Because you're learning. You should always be learning, always be challenging yourself, and then always listening to what your instincts say. Get off the couch, go walk outside, get some sunshine, go step on the earth. Like all those things that like I get told every day. I have to tell myself, go stand outside in the sun. But yeah, it's like just knowing that intuition serves you and having that connection to it just so much more powerful in your day-to-day life and your awareness to being human.
I think too, it's also this space for me. The gift is it allows me to become the observer too. Like it really pulls out, and I have learned that that's really my connection with my higher self. Is can I kind of pull out? Can I get out of the intensity of the moment? Can I get out of this second where this is just kind of going south for me? And can I observe and soften my body? And it always is for me, it's a place of releasing the brace and just going with it and letting whatever it is, letting spirit, my guides, letting those people kind of manipulate the energy around me for a little bit so that I can observe and I can learn, which goes along with deeper connection to your higher self, deeper connection to your intuition, growth and maybe, so often when I and at least me, when I hear the word growth, I sometimes I'll kind of brace to that word because I'm like, "Well, okay, but I don't always have to move and change and do more." Growth is not always that. Growth is an upward movement, but that upward movement can be it to fill yourself up. Like it doesn't have to be else an expansion past you,
Right.
which is, I mean, that's we're getting into wood energy there, and that's why I just love the elements so much. Because you can see this rhythm, like, they just kind of play in everything, and it's just a system. Um, so the last I wanna kinda read, if I could, I'm gonna read the final bits of my words for the void right now that I am and I'll be curious what you guys think about this. The void is both unsettling and magnetic, a darkness in motion. It's the pull inward, like being carried towards the edge of a waterfall, shrouded in mist. There's no way to see what lies beyond the drop. You can feel the current rushing. You can hear the roar of water, but the outcome is hidden, unknowable. In relationships, the void shows up as those moments of reckoning, the quiet tension when words go unspoken, the heaviness that needs unmet, emotions tucked away. The void isn't stagnant, it moves, it tugs at you, it pulls you closer to the essence of things, asking questions you may not be ready. Sorry, asking questions you may not be ready to answer. The movement inward is where the fear lies, not in the dark, but in the unstoppable pull. It's the sense of going over the edge of something too deep to control, unsure if the fall will break you or bring you calmer and truer flow. Maybe that's why the void feels so terrifying. It demands surrender, not the kind you choose, but the kind that you can't avoid. It's not just about sitting with the unknown, it's about trusting it. And yet the void has its own strange beauty. It strips away illusion. It clears the space where new growth can happen. The fall reshapes things, carves deeper paths, but feels like an ending might just be a beginning. The void whispers, let go. And somewhere in the fall, there is a chance to find not just the end of fear, but start to see something freer, something real.
That was
Amen.
beautiful.
What are your thoughts on that?
100% that. Yes.
Yeah.
I have nothing else to add to that. That was beautifully said.
Ditto.
Well, shit.
Good job, kid.
Well, shit. Our podcast episode's over now. No, if there's anything that I really hope that anyone who ever listens to me or anything that I say is, if you feel that brace, if you feel that conversation of good or bad, you're probably about to go into the void, and it's okay. It's actually really freaking great. And the more that you allow yourself to go there, the more you're going to bring a circle of people around you. Because we've talked a lot about the mind, right? We've talked about the body and how it handles it. Well, now where does the collective come into that space? You find a community of people who get what you're doing. You find the people around you who understand what it means when you say that you're going into the void, and that they learn to hold space for that and not trying to pull you out of the void, because that's not what needs to happen. You couldn't anyway. But to hold your hand as you walk through it, and so that you don't feel alone in the void, and that you can start to figure out how to move your feet with the ground moving underneath you. And you can do all these things, and it doesn't have to be this earth-shaking, totally transform your world, but it also doesn't have to not be that either. It can just be what is to be, and you don't have to create so much pomp and circumstance around it. But you can do it in the way that feels good to you.
Oh, it is. I feel that. I feel every single time that I have gone through the void, if I didn't have my person, my community to help normalize that experience for me, that'll really allowed me to lean into it, I feel like I would have fought it tooth and nail. So I think in order to build that trust with yourself, you have to trust that there's someone on the outside too that's willing to hold your hand through it, that can guide you a little bit. And my hope is for everybody to find that person. And even for me, it's been a different person every single time I've gone through it. So allow that to flow. Trust in yourself. Trust in the people that are here to support you. Trust in your guides. Trust that the universe and your higher self has your back. And go into the void coming out better than you were before.
And one other thing I'd like to say, just make sure that the environment that you have while you're in the void is something that can help support whatever it is you're going through. If that's your home, awesome. If it's your work, awesome. But if you need a space, that's what we do. That's what we offer. We have space for you to come and actually get through some of these voids. Like, know what it's all about. Jasmine knows. I didn't know, but I do, right? I think we all know. It's just a matter of being aware to it. So that's the beauty in it all.
Yeah. That feels complete for me.
Yeah.
That's Thank
Okay.
you so much for listening. We love you so much. Until next time.